Reference librarian here at the library, and we're very pleased to co-sponsor this event with the Guilford Conservation Commission. So I'm going to turn over the mic to Laura, who is president? No, chair. And then she'll introduce our featured speaker tonight, and after his presentation, he'll entertain some time for questions as well. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Loretta, and thank you all for coming this evening. It's great to see such a good turnout. How lucky we were that it snowed yesterday and not today. Let me tell you, very happy for that. This is the second in a series of presentations that the Guilford Conservation Commission is putting on. Tonight, the series is called Living with Wildlife. And at the end, we'll be asking for you to give us some thoughts about other topics in this, subjects in this general topic area that you might be interested in, to give us some guidance. The Department of Energy and Environmental Protection does a terrific job in providing speakers, and we can find speakers on any subject as long as we know what you're interested in. So thank you so much for your input. I would like to just take a moment and talk a little bit about the Conservation Commission. It is a commission of the town, and I am joined on that commission by a terrific, small but really effective group of people. First of all, Laura Malice. Laura, want to raise your hand? Laura is our marketing expert, and she's the one who's really helped put together a lot of the visuals for this evening, and you'll see how talented she is in a moment. Patrizia Di Lorenzo, and Patrizia is, among the many other things that she does, and is our treasurer and our general resource. She really knows about these cameras and things, so that's great. Paul May, Paul, right back here. Paul has, I think he's been the longest standing member of the commission on and off, and on many boards and commissions in town related to nature and to the health of the towns and the community. Emily Cello, here's Emily. Bruce Lincor, right there, and Terry. Okay. Jamie Mastrovoni, and also Kevin McGee is our representative from the town. So I have we'll put it in the back later, but it's a sign-up sheet, so if you would like to get a personal invitation to any future presentations, just sign up, give us a phone number and an email, and we'll be happy to reach out to you. And of course, if you're interested in volunteering, we have 51% of the town is open space. It will be not developed, and a good portion of that, something like what, Kevin, how many acres do we have that the town owns?
The town has about 2,000 acres of
2,000 acres.
Equally, if not a little bit more than that, and then the Regional Water Authority has a larger percentage of that also.
So what's been happening is increasingly open space has been expanding. The Land Trust has been purchasing land, the town purchases land, and what's been happening is this, it's all about connectivity. So what had been a parcel over here and a parcel over there, and maybe there would be like a little micro climate, micro environment that some animals would be living in and thriving in. What's happened now is all these parcels are being connected, and that invites the wonderful experience of greater numbers of wildlife and greater varieties of wildlife. So the fact is that one of the great things about all of this open space, we are not alone. And so we have to figure how we can live effectively, healthily, and happily with all these different kinds of species, which I think is a really high-class challenge. So I'd like to introduce our speaker tonight. His name is Paul Riga. He is with the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, DEEP. He's a wildlife biologist, and he's been in Connecticut for 30 years, although I just found out he's from actually Wisconsin. He has a master's degree from the University of Maine and a bachelor from University of Wisconsin, and it has to do with the general area of wildlife biology, I believe. His responsibilities are, let me see if I can get this right, fur bearers and bears. So a lot of us have fur bearers in our houses, leaving most of it behind has been my experience on the floor. But this would be wildlife fur bearers and bears. So he really is an expert in this field. So before we move on to Paul's presentation, Laura Malice reached out to invite a number of local people in Guilford who may have captured some pictures of bears in the community. Hi, Lynn. Nice to see you. And so we have a few pictures. So the first one will be right here where there's a star where it says Guilford there.
Okay, as was mentioned, I am a wildlife biologist. I've been working with mammals now for over 30 years in Connecticut. I started working with a grouping of mammals called fur bearers that are mammals that range from weasels and muskrats and beavers up through foxes and coyotes. And I also now am heavily involved and spend actually most of my time with black bears. I did not come to Connecticut to work on black bears. 30 years ago, black bears were a very rare occurrence in the state. At some point, I don't know exactly the year, but our director came to me and said, hey, there's more and more of these bears. You're already working with mammals. They're on the western side of the state. You're on the western side of the state, so you're going to take on the responsibility of black bears. And so that happened, and it just has not stopped expanding since then. It's probably been 20 to 25 years. So black bears have an interesting history in the state. Tonight I'm going to give you just a little bit of a history lesson, not too intense. I'm going to describe the biology of black bears, their natural history, and then talk about some of the management issues that our department is dealing with when dealing with black bears. So if you have relatives that live in other states, friends in other states, you tell them that you live in Connecticut, this is maybe what they picture. We are a very populated state. We have a lot of people, we're a small state. But not all of our state is like this. And if you take the effort to go out for a hike, get up on some of our hills, this is northwestern Connecticut, take in a vista, it almost appears that we're unbroken forest. And we do have a lot of forest now in the state that's very connected. It hasn't always been this way. This is probably close to what our state looked like when the first colonists arrived. But with the first European colonists came some demands on the forest. They started clearing land for a number of reasons. They cleared land especially for agriculture, but there were other reasons. In the 1700s, 1800s, wood was the primary fuel. We weren't using petroleum. At one point in our history, we had a large charcoal industry that really demanded a lot of wood for fuel and for making the charcoal. So what was a state that was nearly 100% forested before European colonists soon became a state that was predominantly non-forested. And this is a chart of the amount of forest, the percentage of forest in the state through time. As you can see, in the mid-1600s, nearly 100% forest, and that dropped as more forest was cleared for agriculture and these other uses. And that hit the low point about the mid-1800s. About the mid-1800s, we were down near 20% forest land, and the rest of the land is cleared. And then certain things happened to somewhat reverse that trend. You go past the mid-1800s into the 1900s, 1950s, you see we increased forest land quite a bit. And some of the factors that led to that were the abandonment of farms. For one reason, the Industrial Revolution came along. People were once making their living in agriculture, moved to cities, got jobs in factories, and that was one factor. Another factor is that expansion of our country into the western states. It expanded into areas with much better farmland. So people that were really set on making a living farming learned that they could move a little bit further west and have much better soil and much better farming. So we have regrowth of forest from a low point in the mid-1800s. And some evidence of that history lesson is if you go take a hike, and I tell people if they don't believe me, go take a hike. Go out into almost any of our forests now, and you hike along and you find these stone walls. And people back 150 years ago didn't spend their time building ornamental stone walls. They were building stone walls out of necessity. They were clearing fields, clearing rocks. They were making borders between fields. So these stone walls you encounter, you think back 150 years, 175 years, they probably were open field on at least one side of the wall, and likely both sides of the wall. So that was a tremendous change in our habitat. So that affected a lot of our wildlife species. If you can think of species that depend on forest land, their habitat declined rapidly and then has rebounded. And bears are actually one species that in this part of North America are very forest dependent. So their habitat declined quite a bit. But other factors led to changes in our bear population too. Prior to about 1900, there were very few rules that controlled what people did with wildlife. In the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, there was very little regulation, very little law, no conservation really wasn't a concept at that time. So people could do what they want. And with so many people making a living in agriculture, bears were not seen in a very positive light. They were seen as a threat to your livelihood. This quote, I think, does a really good job of showing what people's mindset was back then towards bears. It's from the New London Gazette, 1766. there are the greatest number of bears come down among the towns that ever was known. They destroy great quantities of Indian corn and make great havoc among the sheep and swine. Last Tuesday morning, a large he-bear was discovered opposite the treasurer's, and being pursued, he took to the main street and was followed into the south meadow where he was shot. So this bear wanders into a town near the treasurer's office, and a crowd gathers and they chase him and shoot him. And I think they actually, the rest of the quote, they ate the bear that night. Any idea what town this occurred in? It was in the New London Gazette, but it was not in New London. The clue is in the South Meadow, which was Hartford. So that's what people thought about bears. Bear comes into town, you got to chase him down and get rid of him. So there were two forces then: habitat loss and persecution, exploitation by humans that were working against bears in the early history of the state. And this resulted in bears being what our term is extirpated, which means locally extinct in the state. And it's thought that by 1840, there were no bears left in Connecticut. A species that once was thought to be statewide, as our forest was statewide, by 1840, they were gone. A colleague of mine in Massachusetts did extensive research, historical research into newspaper accounts, journals, and such. And the last recorded bear he found was one that was shot in 1840 in Goshen. So they were gone by 1840, and remember, after that, our forest was regrowing. We were getting better habitat after that. Around the turn of the century, the conservation movement started. There started to be laws protecting certain wildlife species. And bears didn't respond very rapidly to that. It took them quite a while to respond. There were occasional bear sightings in our state in the early 1900s, 1920s, 1930s, but very rare, very sporadic. And it's thought that those bears that were seen were young, dispersing males. And this is research that was conducted in Massachusetts that radio-collared young bears where they were born, and this shows you the distance that some of these young males dispersed from where they were born. Some pretty long distances, and it's very easy to imagine just turning one of those arrows southward, and it could easily reach into Connecticut. So a lot of the sporadic, very early sightings we didn't think were evidence of a bear population in our state. Most of those sightings were of single bears and smaller bears, so that goes along with that thought that they were young, dispersing males. It wasn't until the 1980s, about 1980s, mid-1980s, that we thought that we had evidence of a bear population back in the state. And some of that evidence was more frequent sightings rather than the sporadic sighting here and there. There were sightings every year, multiple sightings. There were sightings of groups of bears, which suggested that they were females with young, rather than these males that can wander all over the place. There were sightings of bears near the winter period, near the denning time. So a bear that was seen in, say, Norfolk or Colebrook in November, chances are it was going to den through the winter and could be considered a resident at that point. So very, very early, about the earliest we thought we had some resident bears was about the mid-1980s. So that's the end of the history lesson, pretty much. So to recap, pre-colonial time, bears were found throughout the state. We had forest almost ubiquitous in the state. By the mid-1800s, they were gone. They were extirpated from the state. Resident population about the mid-1980s. And just a reminder that they are very forest dependent in this part of the country. So you might ask, well, on that graph, mid-1800s, the forest was coming back. And we actually had quite a bit of forest by, let's say, the 1960s, 1950s, 1960s. Why did it take bears so long to come back to our state? Well, one reason is that not all forest is the same. If you think of cleared land reverting back to forest, in those early years, it's seedling sapling stage. It's very small trees, and probably wasn't providing some of the best habitat for bears. It seems that some of a component of mature or older trees is better for bears for a number of reasons. A big one is food. So an oak tree that is only 10 years old really doesn't produce nearly the number of acorns, the amount of acorns that an oak tree that's 80 years old does. So the trees were growing. Also, bears often den in association with large trees, either trees that have fallen over, sometimes in large dead hollow trees. So some component of older trees is important for bears. Another reason that it took so long for the population to come back to the state, from a remnant population that was in western Massachusetts, is that the young females don't behave like the young males do, sort of like in humans. The young males wander all over the place. They disperse. The young females, each generation, they only move a few miles and they settle down. They usually settle down, set up a home range, overlapping their mother's home range. So every generation of females might be only moving 3 to 5 miles across the landscape. And then they get sexually mature at 3 to 5 years of old, and then their offspring, their female offspring, only move 3 to 5 miles. So it's a slow process for bears to move across the landscape. I always think about glaciers moving south. Forest is very important for bears, but other habitat types are important for them. In the springtime of the year, in natural conditions, marshland, wetlands are very important. If you go out for a walk in the spring, some of the first places where plants green up is in wetlands. And that's one of the first places they find food when they emerge from a winter den. Important food, spring food for bears is skunk cabbage. So they come out of a winter den, some of them eat a lot of skunk cabbage, not the best food to gain weight, and so they may actually continue to lose weight for those early spring months. As you get into later in the year, into later spring and the summer, other foods become important for bears. They love colonial insects. They love bees, ants, and wasps. I always tell the story of examining a bear that had been hit by a car, looking in the stomach, and finding what at first looked like white rice, like cooked white rice. And there were like several quarts volume of white rice in the stomach. And then I looked a little closer, and mixed in with this white rice was little red ants. And the rice kernels were actually ant pupa. So that particular bear found a number of ant hills, or maybe the mother of all ant hills, and gorged itself. But they like colonial insects. They especially like colonial insects that we put in cubicle boxes and stack up for them, the honeybees. Their diet is largely plant-based. They're mostly an herbivore, but on occasions they will be a carnivore, they will be a predator. Not their main way of life, but they are opportunistic. There's been several studies that looked at what are the mortality factors for white-tailed deer fawns in early summer when they're born. And some of these studies have shown that bears are pretty adept at finding fawns and preying on them. They are opportunistic. If an animal dies from another cause, they may make meals out of it. So if a deer gets hit by a car, for example, a bear may be happy to make a meal out of that. But their diet is largely plant-based. They eat a lot of berries, quite a variety, greater variety than we eat, but they like the ones we like too. They like raspberries, blueberries, blackberries, but they also eat the dogwoods and wild black cherry, autumn olive, the list goes on. And then we get to the winter time, and what do they eat? What do they eat in the winter time? We hope not. We hope not. The answer was birdseed, but we hope not. Well, most bears that are well behaved go into a winter den. Typically by November. Sometimes it doesn't happen until December. It depends on what the weather conditions are at the time and what the food supply is at the time. Bears, probably the most important food for bears is acorns. And if we have a fall where there's a very good acorn crop, they will stay out and not go into a den, and they'll continue to eat, try to put on weight. Okay. Let me back up. Just one comment about bears going into the winter den. So in Connecticut, it's not unusual for them to enter the den in November, stay there December, January, February, March sometimes even into April. So for certain years, some bears, 4 months, 3 months, 5 months, big part of their life, just going into a winter den. They don't eat that whole period. They tend not to urinate or defecate. And it's a really interesting physiological phenomenon. They can go in and lay down. They don't move a lot, but they can get up and move around, and living off their stored fat. There's been a lot of interest in this for human medicine. If any of us are laid up, say you get a cast on a broken leg, don't use those muscles for a month or 2 months, your muscles atrophy. That doesn't happen so much with bears. They hardly lose muscle mass, plus they're ready to get up and run at a moment's notice. Okay, so bears started coming back to the state, and so we tried to start collecting some information on them. One kind of a low-tech, but very valuable piece of information we've been gathering for a number of years is having people tell us, report bear sightings to us. And we've been soliciting these for, 25 years or so. What does that say way over there? I'm going to step around. Thank you. 94, 95. So that year, looks like we had, maybe we collected 25 bear sightings. The next year, not too much more. Next year. Here we're around the year 2000. We're over 1,000 bear sightings there in the early, right around 2001, 2003. And you can see what the pattern is here. Bear sightings. These are instances where somebody saw a bear and made the effort to report it to us. 2012, 2014, 15, and last year. So last year was a bumper year. I don't know all the reasons why it was, but we were over 6,000 and that's 50% more than the year before. So you can see the trend. This is not bears, this is not the number of bears, but bear sightings reported to us.
And this is where?
This is statewide.
Just Connecticut.
Just Connecticut. Okay. So with those bear sightings, we get other information. Where are people seeing the bears? This is very early on when bears started coming back into the state, and you can see somewhat scattered, but you see a lot up near the Massachusetts border. No town with more than 25 bear sightings. Okay, about 10 years later, a lot of towns with bear sightings, mostly northwestern Connecticut. Again, no town with more than 25 bear sightings. 90, 91. We get to year 2001. More towns, just overall in the state, more towns. Now we're getting towns that have, actually, the one town there's Barkhamsted, the dark red, that had between 50 and 100 bear sightings that year. And then some of the towns just south of there, New Hartford, Simsbury, Canton, in that area, more. All right, and it's filling in. More bears, more density of bears, more density of bear sightings. Some towns now with more than 100 sightings in the town. And it's gone on. Unfortunately, I don't have this updated. A lot of our towns would be those in northwestern and western Connecticut would be those darker shades if I had a newer map. Oh, one more. Simsbury, Farmington, Avon, West Hartford, Burlington. That's the core of this dark area. And there's we know there's a number of biases in different directions with this data. But definitely, when a bear wanders into a town with more people, there's more people to see the bear and more people to make a report. We know that. But it gives you an idea of the distribution. And just look at how many towns weren't visited by a bear, not a lot. If I had a newer map, this darker area would start to be spreading southward. New Milford, towns near New Milford, Southbury would be a dark town from last year. I got one more. Okay. All right. Another thing we've been keeping track of is cases of bears being killed by cars. So first one I think in the history of Connecticut was in 1990. Back in the 1800s when we still had a small bear population, there weren't any cars around. The bear population came back to a landscape that had roads and cars and shopping malls and all that. And first one we ever recorded, I think it was the first one in the state history, in 1990. 2012, up to 28. Last year, 43 bears hit and killed by cars. And we believe there's others that go unreported. All right, so that was kind of low-tech gathering of information on our bear population. And we've done a little bit higher tech work, trying to get better information on the bear population. So actually going out, trapping bears, tagging them, some fitting with radio collars, getting information on where they move, what habitats they use, and some idea of the population. And so we've caught bears, we've caught small bears, and we've caught large bears. There's been bears out roaming in the Connecticut landscape that we estimated to be 600 pounds. Okay, and just to show you how hard it is, you can see a bear that's been tranquilized. You see a red ear tag on it, and basically our job was done, and we're congratulating ourselves and talking it over. And this was at 2:57 in the afternoon. At 3:02, after we were talking there for a while, you can see people were a little concerned about something. They moved that bear out of the way, and a couple of minutes later, another bear comes along. And our very useful bear trap, and we caught him. It's not always that easy, but we have caught and tagged quite a few bears. I'm pretty sure we're well over 200 at this point. All right, so ear tags. This is still, I'd say ear tags are kind of low tech, but with ear tags we get information that we'd never get without ear tags. We ear tagged a young male bear in Goshen. It was subsequently hit by a car near Albany. We wouldn't know that if there was not an ear tag on it. The people in Albany would think, oh, there's a dead bear, and well, that's a dead bear, but it started off in Goshen. Our counterparts in Massachusetts ear tagged a bear up by Amherst. We caught it over near Cornwall, and then caught it again in Heartland. One spring day there was a bear on Main Street in Middletown. Next time you go visit Middletown, notice there's 2 trees on Main Street in Middletown. They're small trees, and the bear was up one of them. We removed it off of Main Street, released it in State Forest. It was shot that fall in Vermont by a hunter. One of our more famous bears we caught in Heartland. A week or two later, we caught it in Plymouth. Then it was up in Granville, Massachusetts. A week or two later, it was down in Plymouth. A week or two later, it was up in Heartland. This is a male bear. A female bear would never do this. And then it came back down to Plymouth, and then back up in the Granville area. Our theory with this bear, this male bear, was that he had a wife in Plymouth and a girlfriend. So the ear tags are very valuable for us. It helps us see where bears are moving, identify individual bears. Some problem bears can be identified with ear tags. But we're also interested in the female bears and their reproduction. And as you can see, this female bear, you see a white band on the neck. That's a radio collar. And we're particularly interested in seeing what the reproduction of our population is. That's what's going to fuel population growth in the state. So here's a female with 2, I'd say those are yearlings. Okay. So by radio collaring the females, we can then go to their winter dens, and their winter dens are not all that impressive. They're not the big caves that you see in children's books. They're tight little crevices and little nooks in brush piles, like this one. Most of us would walk past this brush pile and not give it a second thought. But if you squeeze in there with a friend, you might find a bear. They like to set up their dens in association with large trees that blow over. Here you see a tree that's toppled and the root system is up in the air. And it's hard to see, but there's a bear den right here, and that's the bear with snow on the fur. And here's that same den with the bear removed. Occasionally, parts of hollow trees, and of course you need a large tree to accommodate a bear. So, comfy. And sometimes they just set up dens on the ground without much cover. This is in a laurel patch, so there's maybe a little cover from the wind. But here's the bear's nose, and an ear tag, and the back, and the rump. So this was just a den. They look like bird's nests. They will pull bedding material, leaves and such in, and they look like a bird's nest. And so another interesting thing about their biology is during this denning period, in January, typically in January, middle of January, coldest days of the year, they give birth. They give birth in the winter den, and just an interesting that's the time that they do it. And by visiting dens, we get an idea of how many cubs they're having. We're finding an average of just over 2 cubs per female bear. 2 is common, and 3 is common. Okay, so with getting this information, we can start to get an idea how that population is going to grow. They have their first litter at 3 to 5 years. Cub survival is extremely high. The first year survival of cubs is close to 80%. That's very, very high for a wild animal. Adult females survival is extremely high. There's very little mortality factors in our adult female bears. So you can plug all these things into a population growth equation and get, conservatively, we think that this will lead to 10 to 15% population growth per year, which is a doubling of the population every 5 to 7 years. Okay, now some of the more high-tech things we're doing. So, interested in the reproduction, but we're also interested in the habitat use. And with these radio collars, we have been able to go out and determine where a bear is at the time we go out there. So every one of these yellow dots represents where a bear was. And we used to use radio collars that required us to go out with a receiver and get a signal and get a bearing, get a cross bearing, and figure the location out that way. And we were happy when we got 50 locations of a bear in a year. There's new technology. There's radio collars that now have a built-in GPS unit. So your car with a GPS unit, your car knows where it's at. If your car could think, it would say, I know where I'm at. It'll take 5 years, they're going to have those cars. But these GPS collars on the bears, they know where they're at. The GPS unit knows where it's at. And so now there's these GPS collars that very accurately get a location on a bear without us having to spend the time trying to find the bear. And so that's the type of data we get from GPS collars. We probably now get as much data in about 3 days as we used to get in a year using this GPS technology. And one thing we can do with that is, determine home range sizes, which tend to be about 12 to 15 square kilometers. It's getting down about let's say 4 to 6 square miles for a female bear. But we're also able to start to look at what habitats they use. What habitats are important for the bears? And we've learned what habitats they prefer. And once you have that information, you can then look at the state and say, okay, they like this particular habitat. Where is that habitat in the state? And this is a prediction of where bears are going to populate the state. Right now, they're still concentrated in the northwest part of the state. The population has been moving, but we think all of eastern Connecticut, which doesn't have many bears now, it's got very good habitat, and with time, the bear population is going to grow and spread into that part of the state. Here's a bear that we knew as the airport bear. You can see, here's Bradley Airport runway, and you can see the habitat this bear uses. There's tobacco fields up by Bradley Airport, but this bear is in the forest, hardly ever out in an open area in the field. And this same bear, Windsor Locks, the town next to Bradley Airport, every once in a while the bear visited into Windsor Locks, and you can see how it did that. It's staying in these green habitat corridors. One time we had to handle the bear in Windsor Locks, and this is sort of their main street, and a crowd gathers. Okay, so now some of the issues we have with bears. It's not everybody is happy that bears are coming back to the state, and there are some issues, and they vary in severity. It's one of our greatest issues is bears getting bird feeders. And if this was all it entailed, it wouldn't be so bothersome. But one thing that is occurring here is this bear is learning to find food near humans. It's learning that if it can lose its fear of humans, if it can lose its fear of dogs and human commotion, it can be rewarded by finding food. So in some regards, we look at a photo like this and we say, this is a bad bear in training right here. It's learning bad things. Here's, for the last 5 years, some of the numbers of different types of damage or conflicts that we've had. You can see bird feeders and trash are two very common ones, and two that are often pretty manageable by homeowners to change their behaviors so they're not contributing to bad bears. Beehives, not uncommon. Every time we talk to beekeepers, there's a state beekeepers association, they always say that we're not really getting all the reports that there are out of beehives being damaged. They do attack livestock. Last year we had a case of we think it was one bear in about a 4-town area that every week would kill a goat. And I was surprised how many people own goats actually. Bears that break into houses, that is one conflict that we think is a very serious conflict, that if a bear is so bold to break into a house, overcome all the human smell that must be there, that we think that's very serious. And various types of structural damage, fences, garages, hot tub covers, a variety of structural damage. Okay, another category that's not on here is what we call urban bears. This is West Hartford. This is a spot where a 400-pound bear decided to wander into town and get stuck. And so each year we handle a small number of bears that get into urban settings and just create crowd problems, traffic problems, and seems like they're going to create more problems if we don't get involved to get them out of there. Here was a bear. If you were up on the ladder looking down, all you would see is concrete and businesses. This was in, you guys can help me here. It was in, I think it was West Haven at the University of New Haven campus. This was many years ago, but a bear wandered in there and got stuck up a tree. It's just a very small oasis. There was maybe 10 trees at most in this little patch. Somebody's a grape arbor, and so we have conflicts like that. We have agricultural conflicts. They do kill livestock. These are 3 sheep killed in one night by a bear. So we do get involved with that every year. One of our responses, well, let me mention, we have a policy that we respond to different categories of problem in different ways. If you call me and say a bear got into my garbage, I'm not going to try to do anything to try to trap or handle that bear. I'm going to advise you to things you can do to make your garbage less available or less attractive to bears. Certain problems we do try to trap bears, and we do try to haze bears or aversively condition bears, which is basically catching the bear, giving it a real negative experience. If this bear is being sprayed with pepper spray, and then releasing it and hoping that that experience causes the bear to avoid situations like that in the future. Just trying to change the bear's behavior. And they're defiant. They stick their tongue out at you. But there are categories of bears. Bears actually do break into a home, and we can capture a bear that has broken into a home and know it's the right bear. We would euthanize that bear. If a bear shows true aggression towards humans, we would euthanize a bear like that too. One category that we have not dealt with in the state is bears killing somebody. And black bears do kill people. It's not really common. This is a graph of fatalities in North America by decade by black bears. I would say it appears to be an increasing trend, which is not surprising because Connecticut's not alone with an increasing bear population. All across North America, black bears have made a comeback. So we're at the point in the 2000s of nationwide or continent-wide about one case of a bear killing a person per year, black bear that is. Okay, and then one conflict that's I think a real important conflict, but really tough to quantify, and it's kind of very intangible, is just people's unease. I showed you earlier that we had over 6,000 reports of bears in 2016. I don't know what the math is. That's an average of, 20 a day? And so you get rid of the winter period, then that's probably an average of 40 reports a day. And a lot of people are very uneasy having bears walk through their yards. They're hoping that it's kind of like there's been a lot of public surveys that people like bears. They like them to know they're out there. But the closer they get to their house and the more times they're in their yard, the less they like them. So as a concept, people like bears, but as a reality, not everybody does. And I can empathize with that. But we do have a growing bear population. Some bears are very habituated. They spend a lot of time in residential areas. Unfortunately, they find food there, which reinforces that behavior. So we're really close to the end here. So just how did we get here? The bear population has increased due to an increase in habitat, increase in forest habitat, and now there's protection, unlike 150 years ago when they weren't very well liked and there was no law preventing anybody from killing one. Now our forest is very highly interspersed with humans. Who can step out their house and walk through the woods right from their yard? So who can step out their house and walk through bear habitat? The same people, you know. So the way our landscape has developed, we have just a very good intermixing of residential settings and forest habitat, which is bear habitat, and human-provided foods. Such as bird feeders and trash or garbage, encourage bears to habituate to houses. So they're a real complicating factor. So now I'll say one of our biggest messages is don't provide food to bears. Intentionally, definitely don't do it, but unintentionally, do what you can do to avoid providing food to bears. That's one of our biggest messages. Okay, so black bear management has, maybe has 4 legs. Public education, we put a lot of effort into putting some publications out on telling people what to do, what not to do relative to bears. We do respond to individual problems. If a bear kills livestock, breaks into a house, we do provide a response to that. We do not have bear population control in our state. Most states that have a well-established bear population have a hunting season and do some control of the bear population through a hunting season. We do not have that. And habitat protection management, that's important for the long-term presence of bears in our landscape. So, the fact that organizations, the state, has protected lands, there will be bears in the future if we have those lands protected from development. So I think bears are going to get into the news more and more as time goes on. The population's spreading southward. This is a map of human population density. Bears first came into the northwest part of the state. Relatively low human population density up there, maybe averaging about 100 people per square mile. But they're moving their way southward, and they're coming into our more populated towns. Maybe towns that have 10 times that human population density. So there's more opportunity for conflict. And that right there is the end.
Thank you very much, Paul. So, time for some question and answer. We've got a few minutes here.
Yes.
Can you tell the sex of a bear by just looking?
Can you tell the sex of the bear just by looking at it? Not. Generally, middle-sized bears, no. If you see a bear if you've got experience and you know that bear is over 400 pounds, most likely a male. But generally, it's tough.
I'm a little bit familiar with Yosemite, where they have a problem with bears breaking into cars. Any car break-ins every year?
Yes, we've had bears break into cars.
They say you don't leave any food in the car because they smell it.
Right,
Rip the door.
right. We don't have issues at the level that they have, but we've had bears break into cars. One interesting story is back about 10 or 15 years ago, early biodiesel. There was a gentleman that was collecting used deep fryer grease and converted his Volkswagen Rabbit to burning that grease, and the bear liked that smell and broke into his car and caused some damage.
So what, is there something that a bear would be really afraid of, like noise or a sensitive noise or light or music, ballparking?
Yeah, it's going to vary with bears. Dogs are probably one of the best deterrents, but so many of these bears can be habituated. They get used to things. You know, there's bears, some bears that live in our more remote parts of our state. If you're out hiking, you'll be lucky to see that bear. I mean, they'll detect you, they'll hear you, see you, smell you before you see them, and they're gone. They're running away. But then on the other side of the coin, we have bears that spend a lot of time in Avon and West Hartford. They're used to seeing people and cars. People bang pots and pans. The bears don't care. They just keep walking along. They're used to dogs barking. So it depends on the circumstance too. I wish there was one, and I wish I could find out what it was and make a lot of money on it. One really good deterrent, whether it was.
There is out in Yellowstone, they've worked a lot with marine air horns, and they've collared bears,
Yeah.
and watched what happens when it's usually 2 or 3 quick beeps on the air horn, and the collared bears will leave the area as fast as they can.
Well, that's one of our recommendations is air horns, but even that, we've had bears that
We'll look at
got used to
habituated
it.
eventually.
But, yeah, and that's just, that's good recommendation. You know, if you're out hiking, even bears in your yard, an air horn, it's very compact, easy to carry around. If you're anxious and don't have the wherewithal to get a yell out, the air horn does it for you. Yes.
So what do you do if a bear comes in your house?
If a bear comes in your house, I would retreat to another room. I would leave. Well, I'm experienced with bears. I would make noise so the bear knows you're there. Hopefully it would then decide, I want to get out of here, okay? If you made noise and it's like the bear doesn't care, I would go to a different room, hopefully close the door, and make a call, make a 911 call. We've had bears go in houses when people were in the houses, some people not knowing it, okay? And I do recall one home entry many years ago where the bear seemed to have gone to every room in the house. Nobody was home, but it had gone throughout the house.
Was he eating orange?
It removed food from cupboards. Yeah. Yes.
What are you supposed to do if you're hiking in the woods and you
Yeah. What are you supposed to do if you're in the woods and you encounter a bear? In one of my handouts, we have these little bear do's and don'ts, which tells this stuff. I'll get them out. They're in that box actually, there by you, sir. A lot of little, those little cards. But, so if you're out hiking and you see a bear from a distance, make noise. Most bears, once they know you're there, they're going to leave. Okay. If the bear doesn't leave, you're making noise, and it's still out there and it's out there, then I would find another path to get where I'm going. You know, don't close the distance on the bear. In the rare event when the bear, very, very rare event, where the bear seems to be interested in you and pursuing you, coming closer to you, don't run, make more noise, make yourself as offensive as possible. I don't know if I have enough of those for everybody, but little fair do's and don'ts cards. So if a bear's like really interested in, make yourself as offensive as possible. Throw things at the bear, put your hands up, put your coat up over your head, try to make yourself look as offensive as possible. That's the advice with black bears. It's the opposite advice with grizzly bears. Grizzly bears, if a black bear, on the very, very, very rare occasion that a black bear is interested in you, it could be a truly predatory behavior. And once you make yourself look big and offensive, hopefully it's going to think, yeah, this is too much for me. You know, this is too much work. I'm going to eat berries. But if a grizzly bear, on the other hand, most times grizzly bears attack, they're trying to neutralize a danger. Grizzly bear sows with cubs, they see something that's a danger, they want to get rid of that danger. They're not trying to eat, they're trying to get rid of the danger. So if you make yourself look much, much less dangerous, maybe they won't bother you. So that's why a grizzly bear with cubs, they say, lay down on the ground, try not to move, you know, cover the back of your neck.
Is there a grizzly population in Connecticut?
No, we have no grizzly bears.
I am very happy to hear.
Yes.
How do you secure your trash?
Keeping it in a garage until it has to go out. There are bear-proof trash containers. If you lived in an area where it was really a chronic issue, and you didn't have like a garage or a shed to put it in, adding ammonia to the receptacle helps, makes the contents less palatable. We have calls from people that have dumpsters, like summer camps, and they have bears using their dumpsters. And there's dumpsters that have metal lids that lock. So that's a pretty easy solution for those folks. A lot of the dumpsters have those plastic lids, and bears can just flip those up or bust them down in. So, yes?
How many bears are there in Connecticut that have dens?
They have dens. All of them.
Resident, not the male bears who come in
Well,
and out of the state.
the male bear is also den, and we have resident bears, but just that as they wander more, especially the young ones. But we have resident male bears. Right now, the bear population we estimate to be 600 to 700.
600 to 700 in Connecticut?
Yes. Right. Yeah.
Two quick questions. What's the typical circadian rhythm of a bear, nocturnal, diurnal, when are they most active? The other question is, has Deep talked about what to do on how to manage the population of essentially exponential growth over the last couple of decades?
First question, diurnal or circadian rhythm. Bears in areas with fewer humans tend to be more diurnal. They tend to be a daytime animal. When there's more human disturbance, more human areas, they can switch their activity to nighttime. So they're not exclusive either way, but tend to be more diurnal under natural conditions. Second question, exponential growth. As I mentioned in one of my last slides, there is no population control of bears right now. Definitely allowing hunting has been discussed. You know, it's most states that have established populations do some population control through hunting. Right now, that has to be legislatively approved. It's not. Our department can't do it just by regulation. And it just so happens that right now there's a early proposed bill addressing that in the legislature. Whether it would pass or not, hard to tell. It's a very politically controversial issue. So,
Do you support it or not?
yes, yes. I think it's prudent. We receive. There's thousands of people that are concerned about the presence of bears. I don't know what the total was on that slide. They cause property damage. Do we want a bear? What is it? What's the old a chicken in every pot and a bear in every garage? The population is growing, and it's costing. Some towns, their police department, Avon dispatches most of them. When somebody sees and reports a bear to the police, they dispatch a police officer. I don't know what they do. But it costs, it's costing money. I don't necessarily support it as public safety as being a driving force, because it's extremely rare for bears to be aggressive. We have had cases of aggressive bears. There's been a couple people minimally injured by bears. But on the other hand, not only is there nothing controlling our bear population, but there's nothing adjusting their behavior. There's nothing. You go to Maine, they've had a bear hunting season in Maine, forever. You encounter a bear in the woods, it's running for its life. They fear humans. We have bears that wander through neighborhoods and they don't care. My coworker was on his way home. He saw a bear in the yard, and he was able to go out and kick the bear in the butt.
Oh.
So, do you want bears just wandering your neighborhoods with little fear of people? This doesn't mean they're really attacking everybody or aggressive, but do you want that situation with bears? Very little fear of humans. And again, I sympathize for, grandparents call me up. Bears are coming into my yard. I don't feel safe letting my grandkids come and visit and play in our yard anymore. I don't have an easy answer for that. So we not only have a growing bear population, but we have a lot of habituated bears too.
Have you found that the habituated bears you captured in populated areas at Hayes, is it hazing working, or is this not enough data?
I'm not optimistic of that being a good solution. We definitely have a number of examples where it doesn't work, when they're just later just became a nuisance bear again. And a number of studies have found that too, that it might cause the bear to avoid people for a while, but then it goes back to its bad behavior. In one of the national parks, they've done it, Yosemite, I think, but they've done it where they've treated the bears like repeatedly, just keep on hazing. We wouldn't have the resources to deal with bears at that level. One good thing about hazing is it turns out to be a very good learning experience for the people involved. Really, it's like we get to talk to the people a lot. They get to see what the effort is. And it really reinforces that they should really go above and beyond to do things to not attract things. Yes?
Probably just maybe two more questions.
Well, I'll listen to the question and then I'll bring this box up as I'm listening.
Mine's not really a question, it's more, I guess, like a thought. So you said that at the moment we have between 600 and 700 bears in Connecticut, which just sounds like a lot, but if you think about it, Connecticut, you know, that's a lot of space for those bears to be. So how many bears would there need to be in Connecticut for there to be like a bear hunting season? Because right now, if you go out and you shoot and you kill 100 bears, now you're back down to 500 bears, and we're just beginning to get them back from 165 years ago when they were kind of extinct in Connecticut.
If you go to northwest Connecticut, the people that live up there will not say we're just now getting them back.
Well, down to this part, I suppose. I mean, if you think about it, like you said, in 1850, there were no bears at all.
Right. Yep.
So I was just,
Well,
I mean,
yeah, I mean, it would have to be managed to try to, and, you know, the goal wouldn't be necessarily X number of bears, but another bigger goal is hopefully addressing problem bears and problem bear behavior. Pennsylvania has a very robust bear population, and they in many years, through their bear hunting season, 20% of the population is removed.
because if you think of 20% of 600, that's a lot of bears to get rid of it, I guess, in 1 year. So I guess what's making a point is we want our communities to be safe and our children and our pets to be safe. But we also want to make sure that we're protecting the population as well, because they are a natural part of Connecticut's history.
If, down the road, if there was a hunting season, usually they're approached very conservatively. There could be, I mean, there's many ways to manage it. There could be a quota, like after a certain number of bears are harvested, then the season could be closed down. So, actually, I think a lot of states actually are too conservative. Bears are a species where the population could be really reduced if that was the goal. And I think a lot of states have bear problems, but they go about it very conservatively. Not a lot of bears are harvested, so they still have quite a few problems. You're never going to get rid of all the problems. There's always going to be a number of problems. You've got to find a balance.
I think that was my point, is, you know, we just don't want to get rid of them completely
Oh,
again.
no, that would not be the goal. That would not be the goal. Well, a couple show and tell things. Here's a radio column. This is the low tech. This is the one that you have to go out and listen to the signal. And it's mostly a battery in here, but there's a little transmitter. It's just like a radio transmitter, like WTIC transmitter. That's all it is. That WTIC is just a transmitter. There's an antenna here, and they have, I don't know, 50,000 watts or whatever they brag about. This, a few volts. But so this gives off a signal, just a beep, beep, beep. And if it's over there, I have a directional antenna. It's over there. I can hear it in that direction. Then I get over there. And now when I'm over there, it's in this direction, and where they cross, that's where the bear is. Very low tech.
Do those like break off after a certain period of time?
You can put material in to make them break off. With the female bears going into a winter den, we have the opportunity to go visit them in the den and tranquilize them and replace them. Or change the thing. This is a bear pelt. So I just brought this along. I should put it over here so people can see it as they leave. But, you know, just very thick fur, very thick layer of fat in the winter.
What did that bear weigh?
I think this one was probably about 200 pounds. It's very rare that they are, very rare that a bear looks unkempt. You know, they always look glossy, almost always look glossy and nice fur. People that report sightings to us often comment, oh, it looks so healthy, the fur looks so glossy.
And have no odor?
They have an odor, it's not too bad, it's like a dog, I guess. And here's just a couple ear tags. So, you know, our goal when we ear tag bears is to make the tags quite visible. So we use these pretty large tags.
Do the different colors mean different things?
Yeah, we tend to do a different color each year. Yep, change color each year.
Is it likely we'll ever see a bear without a collar or a tag?
Without?
Yeah, with no
Oh, yeah.
collar or tag.
The majority of bears roaming Connecticut are not tagged.
So do we call you or just let them be?
Yeah, or on the DEP website, there's a spot where you can report bear sightings. And then you can also see a summary of the sightings by town over the last 12 months. So you can see if in your town, if others have reported bears in the last 12 months.
Do bears get rabies?
Bears can get rabies. They can get rabies. Very rare. There's different strains of rabies geographically across the country. In the Midwest, skunks are a big rabies carrier. In the Southwest, coyotes and foxes. Our part of the country, in the Northeast and the East, a raccoon strain of rabies. But other species, like the raccoon strain, there's hardly ever, like, say, a bobcat. And the skunks aren't real prevalent. Anyways, different species, different susceptibilities to the different strains. But bears can get rabies. We had the first documented case last spring of a bear that was rabid. And it just actually happened to be on one of our research bears. It had a radio collar, and there was these collars also have a mortality signal. If the animal doesn't move for a long time, it gives a signal that says the animal hasn't moved for a long time. And so we went in, and the bear was dead, and we had it tested, and it was died from rabies. But quite rare. That's like the only one that we've had. I know Pennsylvania's had at least one. Maryland had one. Rare, but occasion. And some interesting stories go along with some of the rabid ones that other states have had.
So it's 8:30, so we need to vacate.
Well,
One-
really,
Yeah,
thank you so much.
one last handout. I don't know, I probably don't have enough for everybody, but my division puts out this magazine, Connecticut Wildlife, just stories about some of the projects that we work on and such. So we'll put this